Hey, Taylor Elwood here with Magical Experiments Podcast. And today I have this wonderful guest, Kat, who is joining us. And we're going to have a very intriguing conversation about self identity and being. Kat, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and yeah, go from there.
All right. Well, I write about what's called non-duality, which is basically about seeing the fact that there is no separate self. So, although we believe very strongly, most of us, that we are a separate self, that we are a person and identity, we can actually, when we look at reality directly and examine that, find out that that is not the case. And that's basically what I do. I write about that and talk to people, and it's sort of my life at the moment.
Excellent. So we've had a bunch of people join us. So I'm going to welcome them first, and then we'll kind of go from there. Welcome, Lapel, Lynn, Suzanne, Kartik, Thyan, Caro, Daphne, Kim, Content Carrier, Seamus, Sarah, Sheena, and Ton, and Riva. Welcome, all of you. Glad to have you here. Um, if you have comments or questions, I encourage you to drop those below as we go through this interview, and I will share them when there's an opportune moment. And also, welcome, Ted. So, Kat, I found the reason I wanted to interview you is I thought the whole non-duality thing was really fascinating. And so, my first question for you is I'm curious, are you familiar with the Tibetan Buddhist practice of Dzogchen?
Yes, from afar. I mean, I have never practiced that, and I know that it is it is considered a non-dual practice or form of teaching, but I don't have any direct experience with it.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the reasons because I had actually studied it for a while. So when I was looking through your stuff, I'm like, oh, there's some familiar stuff here. So how did you find new non-duality? Let's talk about your journey. How did you get to where you're at right now?
Um, I have no idea. um, I can tell some logical story and it hopefully makes sense. And the story I tell is different every time because my mind is making it up right now.
Hmm.
So, okay, what's currently being made up is that at some point non-duality found me because I was totally depressed and very unhappy. And I was reading all this self-help stuff. And some of the self-help stuff turned out to be very radical non-dual. I didn't know that at the time, but I was reading this and I understood nothing, but was extremely fascinated. So I read all this stuff saying there is only awareness, there is only this, there is no separate you. And I was like, whoa, this makes no sense. I don't understand what this means, but somehow it was totally attractive, and I wanted more and more and more. And so I just slowly fell into it, and over years, I mean, this took a decade of searching, seeking, reading, listening, all the usual seeker stuff, until at some point the search ended, and there was no reason to look anymore for anything because it was all here.
Hmm. Well, that's a good story. I like it. And I've got some further thoughts on this. Before I go any further, though, let me just say real quick again, hello to Vijay, Edward, Francesca, Juaria, and John. I'm glad to have you all here. Again, if any of you have comments or questions for me and Kat, feel free to drop those below. Welcome, Patrick. If I keep getting tons of people in here, I probably won't do that because that'll end up taking over the entire interview. But I will say to people, welcome, and then just if you have questions or comments, I think we'll do that because we got another person, and I'm like, hey, this is great. I love it when we have people join. It's interesting. Have you ever read the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I read that recently, and for me, that was an experiment or an experience of reading it and surrendering another layer of self to this non-dual reality. And I think you're right. There are multiple ways to get there. I mean, Dzogchen is one way, and I've studied that pretty extensively. But there are multiple ways and paths to get there. And it seems to me, in a large part, it's really about getting getting the mind, the voice in the mind, as Michael Singer would put it, to basically just like to step back from that and realize you're not that voice in the mind.
Yes. And what you come to see at some point is all the practices that you were doing and all the paths that you were walking really weren't happening. It felt that way. It felt like there was a person on a search for something. But all the while, it was just this, which is already the case. But we were distracted. It was sort of the mind searching for something in this. Um, so it's like you're in a loop. You're looking for something that's already there, and that's already the case. And when that becomes obvious, the whole thing sort of collapses in on itself. And that's why things like the surrender experiment, they're beautiful. And I read that book years ago when it came out, and I enjoyed it. The Untethered Soul before that, even more. Um, but all of these were somehow a dead end because the idea of a person practicing their way to freedom strengthens the idea of a person who can do something. And that's sort
Yeah.
of the trap we fall into. So although there are many, many beautiful practices, they are interpreted by the person as something that they can do to get somewhere else. And this is precisely what keeps them away from seeing what is already the case.
hmm It makes sense in a lot of ways because I think what I've kind of discovered as I've gone and done a lot of this different work over the years is that it's like an ego game in a way. Like, oh, I've done something. I've gotten somewhere. I did this, I did that, or something along those lines. And so it becomes this huge ego game in a way where we're like, okay, well, I did something. I got a step closer to enlightenment, whatever that might be.
Yeah, and ego also not only in the arrogant sense, but ego also just in the sense of an identity. Oh, poor me, poor seeker. I'm so far away from enlightenment. I'm not getting any closer. I need to do 50 million other practices. So it can go in both directions, but both are the self, the identity, being strengthened by this idea that we can practice our way towards something.
So here's another question I have, which is, do you think of the self and identity as one and the same, or are they different?
Yeah. So the problem with all of this is all of these terms, we have our own definitions, and
hmm
we can debate definitions probably most of our lives. The way I use the term self is just equals mind, equals ego, equals the whole set of self referencing thoughts that occur apparently inside this body or on this body, or we don't really know where they come from. But it's basically the idea I have of myself as a person and everything that entails. And that definition already sort of implies that it's constantly shifting and changing. So
hmm
when we say the identity, it feels something fixed for many people. Oh yeah, that's me. That's the character. That's my identity. But this is constantly changing. It's constantly morphing and adapting. And this story, like the story I just told about how I discovered this, it's continually being made up in the moment. So it's both very real. It feels very real. Like, oh, there's an actual person. There's an actual me. And at the same time, we can actually almost immediately see that it's intangible. It's just a bunch of mental stuff.
It's kind of like a memory because like
Mm.
we're constantly remembering and retelling and reliving our stories. I mean, I don't know if we're constantly doing that, but like I think when I think about memory and I think about like if I'm remembering an event, I'm retelling that story, I'm reliving it, and yet there are revisions to that story in
Yes.
that remembering. And so it's something where I've really come to see sometimes where it's like, okay, I'm reliving this story either because I'm punishing myself over something that I feel I could have done differently, or I'm reliving the story because I'm trying to get a different angle on it, or I'm reliving the story because there's something else that I wanted to have happen, or whatever it is. Or maybe I'm just reliving it because I want to remember a really pleasant moment. But either way, like it's reinforcing that sense, like it's doing something, and yet it's changing every single time. So there's not really this fixed notion of self. It's not there. Self changes all the time. It's this very flexible reality.
But notice that in the sentences you just said, so I am retelling the story.
Right.
Now there are two of you, right? There's the you retelling the story of you. So how does that work? So in our minds, we're automatically always creating this self that does things and owns the mind. So we're always sort of creating something behind it that is the self, which is in control. For example, the self telling a story about itself. But that's all made up.
Oh, I love it. So we've had a few more people join. Welcome. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have comments or questions, you're welcome to ask them. Daphne said, tell us more about the interviewer. Daphne, my name's Taylor Elwood. I am on the Magical Experiments Substack. I'm also an author. I've written a number of books over the years on magic. I also do some men's work and write about that a bit. And I've even written some fiction over the years and done some other fun things along those lines. So that's a little bit about me. And we're going to continue on here. So this then also brings me to another pondering that I had as we were talking, which is how the illusion of self also keeps us from experiencing the full universe of this body. And what I mean by that is that this body of ours is a living universe in and of itself. It has life within it. It has gut bacteria. It has the cells. It has all these other things, all these other realities within it. And there's that, like, so we're missing out on something with this singular notion of self in a very real sense, because we're actually this collective of beingness that we don't even fully apprehend or understand. What are
Yeah,
your thoughts about that?
that's definitely the case. When you look directly, you see that there is much more going on than thought, and most of the time we are restricting ourselves to being aware of thought. So we're identified with thought, and that limits our world to the mental stuff. But even when we sort of drop into the body and experience all of that, we're still very limited, because the belief is there that this incredible system, as you say, it's not just, it's a whole universe. I call it a system within a system, but we still believe we're limited. We're sort of stuck inside the body, inside that universe, if you will. But really, the question is that true? I mean, do we have any evidence that we are actually inside this body universe and that we are limited to that? Or could it also be the case that there is just one immense experience, one huge universe that is not actually limited to a physical body? And I don't know how to prove that, so I'm not suggesting that I have proof and that I can lay it out here and then everyone will go, oh yeah, okay. But what I'm very interested in, and what I found super mind-opening, mind-blowing, is examining these questions, examining our beliefs that, for example, we are stuck inside this body and are limited to it. How do we know? What evidence do we have that that is the case? And then it gets interesting.
Well, and I don't know that I've ever really felt stuck inside this body. I feel like the body is a reference point. It's a reference, and there's a difference between being a reference and being stuck. So,
yeah,
and I don't know. My self story, we'll go with this if we want, is that honestly, I think the body's a miracle, because we're manifest. We're able to do things with this body that we might not be able to do if we didn't have it. So there's that aspect too.
Yes.
Okay, so we got a question here from AJ with a double question mark, no less. Do you believe in soul? I had to do that.
No. I have never found such a thing. So I try to go about it the other way around, and I try to figure out what I can experience directly and know directly. And that is what I will then believe in because I've sort of seen it, been there, bought the t-shirt. Instead of positing things like a soul or um, God or whatever else, and then trying to believe my way into that. So no, because I have never found a soul, just as I've never found a self.
AJ did a crying emoji and then said, "Very honest." I love it. I love it too. Yeah, no, that's great. So tell us a bit about your books. You've written a few books now, and walk us through a bit about what those books are about and what you cover in them.
Yeah, and maybe not in order because I sort of wrote them in the wrong order. um, the book that's currently being published, or it will be published on March 3rd, is called Seeing No Self, and that's a book of direct inquiry, and that's sort of what we were referring to, all this questioning, sort of open questioning that helps us look at our experience directly instead of assuming all this stuff. We're in a body, the universe is limited. I can only feel my own thoughts. I am the doer. That's a huge one. I have volition. I decide. I make my choices. I create my actions. So it goes through inquiries, questions about all of these different aspects that make us believe we're a separate self, and questions them. And it leads
Mm.
you through that to the ultimate sort of question, well, then who or what am I? What is this? And who or what am I in this? Am I even something separate from it? Or is there just this? So that's really sort of a manual for direct inquiry. It's just basically a bunch of bullet points with questions, but it's very effective. And I wrote that after working with people for multiple years doing direct inquiry. And the book I wrote before that is called Beyond Illusion. And that's really sort of about the science and philosophy, including Buddhist thought, around the idea that there is no separate self.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks at these different aspects of no self and summarizes some of the science, like you just said, the fact that this body is not actually a singular unit, but a bunch of, millions of organisms interacting as a system, that sort of stuff. And over the course of the book, it kind of, blows away all these things that we believe, or we learned that at school, but it ends up not being the truth because science has discovered it's not that way, the way we learned it. So that can be useful, especially for people who are skeptical or they're just coming to this and they're like, no, this can't be true. There is space and time. Of course, I am the doer. Of course, I make my choices. And then the book before that is called Selfless Leadership. And that was to answer the question, if you're a leader and you discover this stuff, you discover that there is no self, what does that do for leadership? And basically, it leads to selfless or servant leadership. Some many want in corporate, but they're desperate to find it, but they're sort of trying to manage their way towards that in a very, very
They're trapped.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
That's really interesting, the leadership thing, because I definitely recognize that with some of the work that I do in men's work, because there's also kind of that component of like men who have this very fixed notion of masculinity and like how they need to show up in the world as men. I think that in and of itself can be a really like because a lot of times one of the memes that they're hearing is, oh, men need to lead. They need to lead in relationship. They need to lead in this, and it's like, well, where am I leading from? Am I leading from ego? Can I lead from service? Things along those lines. And there is an alternate route to that. It's something I explore in some of my own work, but it's really it's really important, I think, to recognize again, like we have very limited ideas, and a lot of times it's being presented as kind of this thing of, okay, you're the one who always has to be in control. You're the one who always has to act. And what I found fascinating when I got into Dzogchen meditation and practices and their non-dual logical way of looking at things was that it was essentially kind of like, well, look, you're going to start out with this practice and you're going to realize that there's no separation here. One of the first practices you learn is a practice where you pick an object out, you look at it, and what you're doing is you're resting your awareness on it. You're not trying to think about it. If you start to think about it, you're like, oh, it's white and it's circular and things like that. At that point, that's yourself taking over, trying to control. Whereas the whole idea is just to be aware of it. I'm aware of it. And I'm saying I'm aware of it, but just that awareness. You're not even thinking I'm aware of it. You're just aware of it and allowing that awareness to come through and shape the experience and aware of yourself at the same time. But the awareness of self isn't even, it's not from an I place. It's from just this awareness.
Yeah. So there is something that is aware, and the practice you just described is what I call direct looking, or just noticing. And it's noticing in a mindless way. So it's without naming, without thinking. And if
Yeah,
there are
exactly.
thoughts, yeah, it's ignoring them, because of course there will be thinking. But this is exactly the type of awareness practice that shows us directly that just the assumptions we have about who we are and what we are here might not be the case. There may be some holes in that belief system.
Are you familiar with the evolutionary collective?
No.
I think you would find that to be really fascinating. I do these practices. They're called we maps and things like that. But one of the things that we end up doing is a practice where we're essentially resting on each other's origination point and connecting with each other and creating this shared experience of like, what are we aware of?
Mm.
And it is very much like, and the interesting thing that always kind of sticks out with me is just how much language in and of itself plays it's this means of communication. Like we're communicating right now, and yet like when I was describing the Dzogchen awareness practice, it's like, yeah, I'm using that damn I word.
Yeah.
But
It's
it's fascinating to try and connect with somebody where it's like, how do we navigate the language and the awareness at the same time? And so that ends up being something that gets played with quite a bit in that practice. And I'm curious as to like your thoughts around that. Like, how do we navigate language and awareness in a way that like we're not getting caught up in the illusory I?
I think what I've found so far is that it's really crucial to first see how these assumptions that we have about being a self are fall down, that they're not, we can't hold them if we look at them clearly. And then once we've sort of, it doesn't have to be completely gone or dissolved. But as soon as we're not so stuck in this idea that I am a self, we can then come together and try and fail and try and fail um, to speak from this knowing that there is no one separate. And I've had, for example, a series of meetings that I called Being No One. Now I have selfless meetings where we show up and we just keep trying to point back to, well, there's just this, and there are no separate someones in here. There's just the collective, if you will, or this occurrence, this happening, which looks like separate bodies on a Zoom call, but it's really just one.
Yeah, that's kind of the same experience of the evolutionary collective. It's this experience of unity in a
Mm.
way through the recognition of how illusory the self is. And it's a very, yeah, it's very fascinating because it also leads to very different states of mind. There's, what I found with the sense of self is that it's a very linear mind. It's very much caught up like in linear time.
Yeah.
So, and it has a very limited sense of consciousness. Whereas when I've done the Dzogchen meditation practices, or I've done some of the other practices that I've done over the years, and yes, I'm talking doing practices, fair enough, I'll own it. But doing those practices, but or being in those practices, or whatever we want to use to describe it, there is this very interesting thing that occurs where the consciousness unravels, the normal consciousness unravels and expands into something else.
Yeah,
And
and okay.
oh yeah, you go for it. Go for it.
I'm I don't know, I kind of feel like challenging that a little bit because that is beautiful and that happens. And I'm sure those things, they're coming closer to what maybe is really the case, but they are states in the sense of that, this comes and goes. So we come together and we experience this and then we leave again and we're sort of back into our separate self. And what can happen is that the whole thing turns inside out. So right now, as this, body is talking, there's no sort of the whole experience is collective in the sense of there's no separation from it. And for that, there doesn't need to be a sort of a special state or a special meeting or you see what I mean?
I see what you mean, and I'm going to challenge you a little bit as well, because as I've gone and done these practices, I've actually found that it has substantially changed my state. So that, like, if I were to compare where I was a year ago to where I am now, like the way that I experience like the practices, it's changed the way that I experience thisness and the world. There isn't really that much that sense of separation
But what you're
afterwards.
discovering is what is already there. So
Yeah, no, well, and I don't disagree with you on that. Well, I totally agree with you on that. But I guess the point, and maybe we're both kind of getting there, is that there's to get there, to have that experience and recognize that that's where that self gets in the way, right? Because that's what we're normally used to. But do this stuff long enough, or be this stuff, or however, whatever the word is we want to use, it starts to change that experience in a fundamental way where it's like, okay, no, we're always there. We're
yeah,
already always there.
the reason I'm saying this is because it often creates, and it created in me, this FOMO, like what I'm looking for isn't here. I need to go to some collective meeting to experience it. And then that will cause me to see what is already here. And that's just creating more stress. So it's creating the idea that we have to go somewhere special, do something special in order to see something. And I'm not doubting that it worked that way for you. And, it could work that way for everyone listening. But it's also the case that it's not necessary
Hmm.
because it's all already that way. We're just not seeing it. So
No,
to believe,
yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that, and I agree with you. Actually, I do. I it's because you spoke to something, you spoke to an experience that I think many of us actually have collectively, which is that seeking of something.
mm,
If I look at most of my life, I spent most of my life driven by a deep inner dissatisfaction with myself. And I was trying to find something. And more often than not, I was looking in all the wrong places because I didn't understand it was already there. So I kept trying to find it somewhere else instead of realizing it was already there and that everything I needed, everything was already provided for, the abundance. There didn't need to be an experience of FOMO.
yes, yes. And sometimes we need a lot of experiences to realize that.
I definitely did. And that's all
Yeah.
right. I mean, it's a beautiful thing because all those experiences ultimately ended up being enriching. And but it was, and I think that it was what I was saying to my beloved the other day. It's like I finally came to a place where I could be content
Mm,
as I stopped seeking happiness and just started allowing that whatever's here is here and it's all here. So I don't need to go and seek it anymore.
Yeah, and we don't even need to allow it because it's here anyway.
That's right. Well, no, we really don't. And yet the interesting thing is how often we get caught up in that game of
Yeah.
trying to, make something happen or for something to be different. And it there's so many different expressions of all of this, and I think that's one of the reasons I was so fascinated with having you on here. It was like, well, let's let's see, this is another expression of it. And it's really important because I think that maybe one of the most important things we can do, so to speak, is really explore the expression because that might give somebody, one of the 75 people that's on here right now, thank you all for being here. It might give somebody a chance to have that realization that that's the expression that needed to come through for them.
Yeah, and I'm convinced of the same, and it's one of the reasons I'm on Substack and sharing all this non-dual stuff on Substack with, all the different expressions of this because there are so many now. Precisely for that reason, because what someone needs to hear, that's the difficulty about this non-dual stuff. No one, due to the conditioning a person has or what they can hear, where they are sort of in their lives, they don't resonate with everything. So you have this radical non-duality, which is very, in your face. There is nothing. There's no one. You can't do anything. Sort of shut up. And that is very helpful to a few people. I mean, some people they hear that, and that's exactly the message and the style they need to hear it in for them to sort of realize, okay, there's nothing to do. But others need the more compassionate, loving, there is no path, but here's a path anyway. And sort of coming from love and devotion, that's to me that's sort of the opposite side of the scale of that. What's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. Anyway, it's a different version, and all of these have those who need to hear that right now. So I like to promote or suggest inquiry, direct inquiry, as this. That's what helped me, and that's what I find very effective. It helps a lot of people, but I know that there are many, many, many who cannot, for whatever reason, access that at all. So there's no point in then just saying, well, this is the only path, and this is the way you have to do it, and this is the only way to express this. It even just the concepts we've used in this conversation, everyone hears them in their own way. So if I speak about inquiry a lot and someone can't hear what that means, they think it's some kind of weird navel gazing. They won't hear. They won't be able to access that, and that's fine. Maybe in a year or so they will, or maybe they will never need it. They'll go to a collective meeting and that'll be it. So who knows? We don't know.
Yeah, we really don't know. And I mean it's one of those cases where it can also be a collection of experiences. It could be I heard about direct inquiry here, and then I heard about this awareness practice there, and then I heard et cetera, et cetera. And at some point it all clicked together and there we go.
Yeah, and the magic, to use that word, the magic of all of this is that it's just happening. Well, there's no one, sitting here, a controller in this body going, oh, well, now I will start writing about inquiry. Or if I'm a seeker, well, now I will go and do this or do that, study this, study that. It's just occurring. So there's the spontaneous intent or then thoughts and idea to go do something, then it's either done or not. It's all just unfolding. So it's really none of our business. Whatever our life is, whatever's occurring, that is our path. That's just how it's unfolding for us. So no problem.
I love it.
It's so simple. It's really easy and completely stress-free.
Yeah. So for all the people who are observing this right now, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in. And You said earlier that the books were written in the wrong order, which I have to admit I kind of chuckled at that you said that, first of all, because it's like, well, okay, but that's what your awareness brought forth, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But I
Yeah, I
also
mean,
can appreciate that as well. Having written books myself, I get it. Like, okay, like I wrote this book years later. This is the book that should have come first.
um, to be honest, I couldn't have written them in another order because I couldn't have written the self, the inquiry book until there was the writing of it. It took a while before I would have not been able to write that 3 years ago. So
We'll have
it
to go
all
out to
gets
receive
done.
it
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, reception is kind of one of those things that I think is that again is kind of not a- appreciated as much as it could be. Like in in Western culture anyway, like the idea of reception, but like in a very real sense, that receiving of it came at exactly the right time. That's the
It's even
that's part of
To
that.
me it's even more of being a vehicle for something because there is no way, and I say this quite often and then people raise their eyebrows, but I say I could not have written these books. I could not have written them, but they were written. And they were written due to whatever millions of variables coming together in that moment. But that I had absolutely no control of. And even especially while writing the third book, there was this constant, you know, realization that I have no idea where this is coming from. I have no idea what this is. But this is the order. This is of the inquiries. This is the ones that need to be in there. Um, yeah.
Mm. So where can people find you, so to speak, on here and on the web in general?
Yeah. So basically just here on Substack. That's the place I write, and I do some meetings because I found that people have questions, and it's a good place to share them, so everyone benefits. And those are on my website, which is just it's on my Substack as well, catoudheusden.com. Um, and that's basically where I am, apart from here.
Yeah. Um, I want to note for people who are watching that we'll have this in the show notes as well, which will be down below the video, so to speak. Alvin did write. He said, "Hi, thanks for this video chat. I'm very familiar with Kat's writings and books. So what gets me often is waking up 4 a.m. with anxiety/tension and half dreaming with non-dual pointers running and really can mess up the rest of the day. Any suggestions?"
Um, so with a lot of respect and love, what's the problem? Because see, we think that means we have to solve something. I am waking up at 4 a.m. with all this stuff going on. But that is what is happening. That is simply what is occurring. If it was something else, right? If it were I'm waking up at 4 a.m. thinking about pink elephants, um, we might go to a psychiatrist or we might do something else. But we notice things and then we conclude, oh, this is a problem for me to solve. But it is just life happening. And if there is it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to solve it. I mean, maybe it's causing us, you know, um, stress, suffering. Maybe there is something that we can do about it. So it's not saying there is nothing to do about this, but it's really worth asking, what is the problem here? And especially, for whom is this a problem?
Mm,
Who is the one who wants to solve this? It is just a bunch of recurring thoughts, apparently at 4 a.m., happening. And it is only the additional thought that there is a someone who needs to fix that causes the problem.
yeah. Greg says, "Be open to your experience. Don't resist the anxiety. Let it run its course without trying to figure it out."
And even that runs its course or not. So you may end up fixing it. And that is what is happening. But the whole point is just it's a falling out of this idea that we are the fixer. So when we fall behind that, as Michael Singer would say, or we fall back out of that identification with I am the one who needs to do XYZ, then there's just life. It's just this thing occurring, and it doesn't always feel good, and sometimes it feels like shit at 4 a.m. But so what?
Yeah. No. Speaking as someone who has had that experience of waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning with anxiety, and I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't have that experience at some point or another. I think that there is just something very real about being like, well, okay, what is it I'm really even trying to solve, and who's trying to solve this? Like, what's like bringing that awareness in, and it can be a very empowering experience in and of itself. By empowering, I mean just like, oh, like I don't have to do anything here. Like, okay, life goes on. I'm here.
Yeah, and I'm not in whatever
And I'm not in
the
control.
Yeah. So at 4 a.m. and afterwards, whatever the body ends up doing, and the body for me includes the mind, whatever that body mind complex ends up doing is just what is occurring. There's no one in control of that. So we can really just relax, fall out of it and relax. And I mean, we all, as you said, we all have had these experiences and we've all obsessed over them, always from the assumption that we need to fix, that we're the one who can fix.
Well, and here's the thing that I would share with that person that might be also helpful, and this is kind of what I was hinting at, but I'll just speak it more directly. You're not alone, and you'll get through it. It's as simple as that. You'll get through it, and it's not about even having to solve it. It's just you'll get through it. You're still here. At some point, you may not be here, whatever here is. The physical existence may not be here. But if we're really in this boundless capacity of the universe, or whatever it is that we want to call it, or what have you, if we're part of everything, we're still going to be here in some form or another, regardless. And we'll get through it. And we're still here. Like, I'm still here. Like, at some point at 4 a.m. at some morning, I had anxiety, right? And yet here I am right now interviewing you. And at some point you had 4 a.m. anxiety, and here you are talking with me, and all these other people are here. So it's like, we're all here.
Yeah. Being remains all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that falling into the recognition of there is the pure being of it. And it's not limited to a body mind that needs to fix itself. That's the freeing part of it. And that the anxiety at 4 a.m. is like the super point, it's a super invitation to see that.
Content Carry asks, would we, quote, we being in quotes, would we be the go-to pronoun for us as opposed to the supposed separate self? I think that's just another further game of self coming out a different way.
Yeah, a lot of this is language games, and language games are always of the mind and therefore always of the self. So I don't think it's so much a word that we need, because there's nothing wrong with the word I. When I say the word I, am referring to this body. I'm just not assuming that there is a separate controller that decides things. So, but there is a body, there is an I in the sense of this human. It just doesn't have a separate self inside it controlling it. So I think that the word I is actually very useful, and the word we is super useful as well, because we also act as a collective.
Yeah, there you go. So, Kat, what I always like to ask is a final question, which is, as we go forward into this day, are there any final words of wisdom that you would like to share with us that we can carry with us into the abundance and nourishment of thisness?
Well, see, again, we don't have to do anything for that to be the case.
No, that's the beauty of it.
It's so cool because it's all already there. So even the question, which is a super question, but even the question assumes that, oh, we now need to, take something with us and go do something in order to get that. Whereas it's already, staring us in the face, or we're marinating in it. We are it. And until that clicks, we'll always feel like something is missing or we need something more. And then my advice would be to just, okay, that's the way it is. But always check, use whatever is available right now. Everything that happens can be a pointer, can sort of point us back to the question, well, what is experiencing this? What is separate from, is there an experiencer? Is there something separate from what is going on?
Beautiful. Exquisite. Well, I want to thank you for being here with us and sharing this space with us, and all of you for coming on and being here as well. And this will go up in a little while so people can watch it again if they want to. And have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your days. Thank you.
Thank you.